Okay, welcome back, everyone, for our Solstice Retreat question and answer session. Before I forget, those of you who are new, keep in mind that we do Q&A sessions once a month. So if you're a member of the Patreon community, I believe it's patreon.com/Kriya Yoga, or if you're taking classes through the Teachable site, kriya-yoga.teachable.com, you get invitations to monthly question and answer sessions. So we've talked about a lot this weekend, and we've gone through some supportive meditation practices. So this is your time to ask follow-up questions. So if you have a question, please type it in the chat box, and then I'll take a moment to read over it and we can speak to it. Now, one question was already sent to me. Let me pull that up. Okay. Okay, so this question deals with using our imagination. And so the question is, how do I know if what I'm experiencing is a real meditative experience or if it's my imagination? So we've talked about this a little bit yesterday. The mind is a very important tool. And whatever we choose to focus on, our goal is to bind the mind in a particular place, to hold the mind steady in a particular place. Because when the mind is thinking about many different things or distracted with emotions and other things, it's like it's vibrating all over the place. It's causing all of these ripples. And if you have a vibrating object in a pool of water, well, all of those ripples make it very hard to see the clarity of the water. So in our meditation practice, it is important what we focus on. Absolutely. That's why we're given specific things to focus on in the Yoga Sutras and other literature. But the mechanics of meditation is simply this. You're choosing one thing to focus on at the exclusion of all else. And in that choosing, you are lessening all the vibrations of the object of your mind, such that it becomes stable and fixed. And then all the ripples through your field of consciousness, they calm down, and then you can experience the clarity of your innate self, the Atman, Purusha, seer. So whether you're imagining a candle flame, or as we talked about, imagining a radiant light in the spiritual eye, or even contemplating the states of consciousness of enlightened beings, those are important, but the mechanics of it, the real essence is that you are focusing on one thing. And in that, it doesn't matter if you're using your imagination or not, because whether you see a candle flame or whether you are imagining a candle flame, as long as you can hold your awareness there, then it has the intended effect of stilling those fluctuations and changes that, in a way, prevent you from completely appreciating the reality of yourself as spirit. Okay, I had another question sent to me as well. Let me find that. Okay, I'll come back to that. So let's pull up the chat box. Can I still make the donations to you to provide to Heart to Heart International? Because this retreat is on donation basis, and I do have it set up so that you could donate straight to Heart. My preference would be not to receive a bunch of emails from them. I'm not going to make donations to Heart on your behalf. The reason I set it up this way so that you donate directly to them, so we cut out the middleman. So it's not coming to me, and then I have to send it off to them. So I would just choose to not accept more emails from them. I think there's an option there. Can you provide the link to the Qigong video that we did to practice? I will check with that. That was a video that Jasmine did specifically for this retreat. I'll see if she's open to releasing it to the public. And then another question about the retreat videos. You said the entire retreat would be posted online. No, what I said was I would be recording them, and then in time I would be releasing them through the Kriya Yoga podcast. But due to a lot of other projects I have going on, I can't promise when that'll be, but it will happen eventually. Okay, so many questions. Wow, this is great. Do you incorporate Ramana Maharshi's inquiry into your practice? If so, how? I do, because I get a lot of inspiration from Ramana Maharshi. But the more you get into the philosophy of yoga, and particularly the methods described through Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, what Ramana Maharshi is doing is Kriya Yoga. It's further down the line. It's more the inner limbs, where we talk about dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And it's focusing on a very abstract part of yourself. You're going straight to the seer, the I. And this is actually a pretty good question, because a lot of people, particularly in non-dualist circles, they say, oh, well, just be the seer, just go straight to that. Okay, well, in a way, that's like telling someone who wants to be a billionaire, just be a billionaire, just jump straight to having all the money. Well, if you come from money, then yes, you just say, hey, Dad, give me $1 billion and then I'll be a billionaire. And that's somewhat of a problem with Ramana Maharshi's approach. However, if we read his material and his teachings, he does know that's a problem. And he does say, well, if you can't do that, well, then do these other things: pranayama, mantra, and so on, japa. So the process of inquiry falls under that category of samyama, which is the inner limb of yoga. Now, the beautiful thing about Kriya Yoga is this: if you don't have a father who's a billionaire, well, the practices of Kriya Yoga show you, well, this is how you build your business so that you can be a billionaire. Now, we're making comparisons here that are just metaphors. But the beautiful thing about Kriya Yoga is that when you begin practicing the initial techniques, alternate nostril breathing, chanting through the chakras, that's preparing you. That's preparing you to practice the initiation techniques, Kriya Pranayama, Jyoti Mudra. That is preparing you. That's the pranayama part of the 8 limbs of yoga. That's preparing you to go inward to pratyahara, to pull your awareness away from all your externals and to feel internally into this flow of the current, the energy through the spine, which, if you recall from chapter 1 of the Yoga Sutras, that indication to meditate on the subtle experiences, subtle fields, and so on. Well, by feeling the current in the spine, that's the subtle field that you're tuning into. And then once you've done that for a while, a long time, you've been able to pull your awareness within. Now you can hold it there. Now you're going to have much more success contemplating, what am I? Because you're still, you're internalized, you're not distracted by all these false ideas of yourself. And you can, in that inner space, look around. Okay, well, what am I? So to be very clear, yes, I love Ramana Maharshi. We changed my room around, the office around. I used to have a big poster of him. And I think I might have actually given that to Danelle accidentally when she went back to New Zealand. She bought a poster. She had a poster with the Sanskrit alphabet, but I think I had my Ramana Maharshi poster in there and I gave it to her. But I would love to have another one of those. So I'll get one. And I've read his books and I've practiced inquiry, but ultimately the greatest success I have had with that is when I've done my Kriya practices and I've experienced that inner stillness and I've been internalized. And then I could more easily direct myself to that very subtle, abstract feeling of what the seer actually is. And then it works beautifully, brilliantly. And I've talked to Mr. Davis about that. Because Mr. Davis, he was actually the one that introduced me to Ramana Maharshi. And he always talked very highly of Ramana Maharshi. And I asked him one time, I think it's actually in a video, me interviewing Mr. Davis on the YouTube channel. I said, well, self-inquiry, Ramana Maharshi's approach, how does that fit in? And he said the same thing. It fits into the Kriya Yoga practice, but it's one of the later limbs of yoga. Now, if you can just jump right in and do the later limbs of yoga, do it. My experience with myself and others has been, if you sit around for 20 years asking yourself, who am I? And you aren't really skillful in turning your awareness within, more than likely you're going to be at the same spot you were 20 years ago. But if you engage certain processes that give you the capacity to go within for 5 or 7 years, and then you begin this inquiry process, you make very rapid progress. That's a great question. It's another question. This one was emailed to me. Do we have to know Sanskrit, and do we have to be able to read the Yoga Sutras in Sanskrit? No, you don't. I do a little dance with that myself. There's a lot of talk about how wonderful Sanskrit is, and it is. It's a very beautiful language. And when I was in the first somewhere between 5 to 7 years of my time with Mr. Davis, I became very enamored with mantras and Sanskrit mantras and so on. And I actually began studying just about a year after I met Mr. Davis. And I was so into it. I had these books filled with mantras, and I was telling him how wonderful it was. Sanskrit's great. And he just looked at me and said, well, you'll outgrow that eventually. And that's it. You outgrow that eventually. And my young 24 or 25-year-old self was just like, what do you mean I'll outgrow that? This is the magical language of the universe. And he just said, you outgrow it eventually. And he was kind of right in that what I realized was he didn't actually spend a lot of time going through using Sanskrit terms. And in fact, for the people that he authorized to teach, he said, don't use a lot of Sanskrit terms. He says, make it accessible to the people that you're talking to. Now, times have changed. Let's see. Times have changed, and Sanskrit have become more incorporated into the lexicon of just hatha yoga teachers all over the place. And so we're used to those words a little bit more. So here's the dance that I do with this. My sense is this. If you have access to a teacher who understands the processes described in the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita, you can just do that. And that's been my experience. I've mentioned that I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. I'm not an expert in any way. I'm very familiar with it. I've studied it a lot. I've read it a lot. But the information that I've gotten hasn't necessarily been from amazing discoveries I had because I knew a particular Sanskrit word. Excuse me. The discoveries and the breakthroughs that I've had have come through just knowing someone who knows what it's about, and they just told me how to do it. So no, you don't. And now this other dance that we have to do is that since it is more common in the lexicon, there's this expectation that, well, if you're a true teacher, you should know how to pronounce all these words perfectly. Okay, maybe. I don't, so maybe I'm not a true teacher, and that's okay. But the danger with it is that if you spend too much time trying to explain yoga with Sanskrit terminology to someone who doesn't really have much familiarity with it, they just turn off their brain. It's like, okay, well, this is way beyond me. And my experience is I know I fail, but I try not to use it so much that it overwhelms you. But I do try to thread it in so that you do become a little more used to it. So can it help? If you've got the mind for it, I mean, if you like that kind of a thing, then it can be very helpful. But most people, even all the hatha yoga teachers, the way they use the words, they're not even using them right. So just having this sort of cursory this basic knowledge isn't probably going to help you that much. But if you've got the mind for it and you're very interested in it, you love it. For example, um, some of the uh, some of the material I listen to is just commentaries on the Yoga Sutras, and there's a lot of emphasis on the Sanskrit. I can sit back and listen to that because I've got 25 years of knowing what those words mean. But for example, when Jasmine sits down and listens to it with me, she's been practicing for maybe 4 years now. She gets the gist of what's going on because she hears me talk about it, but I don't think it's sinking in as much. And she told me that as well. The words become overwhelming. So we always have to remember that these things can be helpful, um, but you don't want to get too bogged down in it unless you actually truly are going to take the time to sink your attention into Sanskrit so much that you can pick up on the nuances. That's the important thing. Otherwise, no. Um, Yogananda didn't run around teaching people Sanskrit. He taught them how to do Kriya Pranayama. He taught them how to read the Bhagavad Gita. He taught them how to be of service. He taught them how to contemplate, how to pray. These are the important spiritual things for everyone that's going to make all the difference in the world, although they are informed by probably texts like the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita. So that's something to think about whenever you're considering Sanskrit. And maybe I talk about it too much. I think that might be a possibility, especially if I kind of reflect on Mr. Davis's approach. I got so much out of being with him and listening to him talk, and never once did I recall him going off on tangents about this sutra or that sutra. He did have quite a few of them memorized, and he would throw them out from time to time as a definition, like yoga chitta vritti nirodha. And he would talk about Atta Yoga Anushasanam, just like Chris did in our meditation yesterday, how Atta is it's a word that means now, like now we begin, but it's also a word that is like a blessing, or it is an acknowledgement of grace. So he would talk about these things, but it would never become the meat of his descriptions. The meat of what I got from Mr. Davis was how to meditate well, how to practice, and how to live according to the yogic principles. And you don't need Sanskrit for that. Okay, let's go back up here. This is a very good point. Yesterday, we talked about the idea of how do you know when you're actually experiencing meditation? Well, I threw out this idea, which I heard from another yogi, that you know you're in a meditative state when you can focus on what you're focusing on for 12 breaths. So, for example, if I'm focusing on a candle flame, I breathe and I'm counting 12 breaths. And if I lose it before I get to the 12th breath, I start over. So, this person's saying, I've been aiming to do that. And I found that the counting was actually splitting my awareness. So I wasn't solely focused on the object of attention. Is this expected? Yes, because you clearly can't just be looking at a candle flame and be counting at the same time without splitting your attention there. So what I do to make it much easier is, again, if you have all of your fingers, and all of your fingers have all of their bones in them, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 segments of your fingers. So if I'm staring at a candle flame, meditating on a candle flame, I do one breath. And then I move my thumb to the next little segment and I do another breath. And so on. So what I'm doing is rather than my mind saying one and trying to remember, oh, I'm on one, and two, oh, I'm on two, six, and so on, you can just use your fingers and go through each little segment and breathe. And then, yes, you are still splitting your attention, but at least then you're still only splitting it between two things instead of 800 things. And when you do it this way, the splitting towards the counting becomes less distracting. But yeah, that's absolutely to be expected. Another beautiful question. Sandy's on fire today. Let me read it because it's a long one. Let's see. So this is a question on acknowledging the lineage of teachers. She says, so to preface, we talked a lot about acknowledging the lineage of teachers. We even talked about how in the Yoga Sutras, there is an emphasis on meditating on the state of consciousness of a being who is ideally a bit more enlightened than you are. And I mentioned how you notice when you're around certain people, you tend to think and behave like them. So when I'm around my gossipy, petty friends, I tend to kind of feel that as well. When I was around Mr. Davis, those things never entered my mind. It's like I was in a whole other world because my field of consciousness, and just like everyone's, tends to resonate with the people that you're around. So the reason that we honor and attune to the lineage is because hopefully they are representative of that clearest state of consciousness. And by doing that, we benefit from that. This is the real meaning of satsang, coming together in truth. It's not necessarily to meet one person and ask all your questions. It's when a group of people come together for the same purpose. When you come together for the same purpose and you are serious about it, you do amazing things. For example, when you get a group of meditators together who are good meditators, meaning they know what they're doing, they're not fighting to stay awake, they're not trying to avoid their anxieties, they already know how to settle in and experience that real deep stillness. When you get a few of those in a room together, the whole dynamic amplifies. The reason I don't necessarily recommend meditation groups most of the time is because most meditation groups are just a bunch of people trying to do it well. And when you're in a group of people who are just trying to do it well, you're struggling with everyone else. You're part of that experience. This is why I recommend becoming really good at meditation on your own. Then if you go to a meditation group, you are the one who is actually stabilizing the field. Now, of course, if you're sensitive, you recognize that, and it can be a little harder for you. But anyway, that's getting off track here. Let's go back to this. All of the teachers of the lineage are humans, and as such have some human tendencies that students might not be advised to perpetuate, emulate, or venerate, quirks, idiosyncrasies, and so on. I believe that you had similar misgivings near the start of your Kriya Yoga teaching vocation, where you also did not acknowledge the lineage in your public meditations or talks. Can you elaborate on your experience and feelings and what brought you back to focusing on the lineage? Why do you think it is important to acknowledge the lineage consistently instead of only in book acknowledgments? Okay. I can definitely answer this. So if you've listened to some of my talks from way back when I was short-haired and trying to be exactly like Roy Eugene Davis, some of those talks, I don't acknowledge the lineage. And that's because in some of those talks, I was just talking to a group of people about meditation. It wasn't necessarily specifically about Kriya Yoga. That's the main reason I did that. And then this comment here about the lineage are humans. Exactly. That's exactly right. I think we have to remember that for many reasons. But let's imagine that you have, again, let's try to bring it to something we can understand beyond this lofty spiritual ideals. Let's imagine you have a father that you love dearly and he loves you dearly. But he smokes. And every now and then he says some off-color comments that you don't like. But other than that, he's a good guy. You know, he's solid, he's clear, he's loving, he's trustworthy, all of these things. Do you write him off and say, oh, well, I can't honor my father because he smokes and every now and then he says something that's off color? No, you recognize he's a human being, but I love him. And what you're tuning into is the love, the trust, the support that is there in that healthy relationship. That's the key, the healthy relationship. And so with the lineage of teachers, this is why I made the comment, well, I won't worry about that. But with the lineage of teachers, they are human beings, but they are human beings who gave their life, made sure that everything they did every day was to support others in waking up. Lahiri Mahashaya, he would go to work He was a clerk. He would go to work. Then he would come home and he would work with students late into the night. Now, how many people do you know that would go to work all day only to come home to be visited by all kinds of strangers to help them spiritually speaking on a donation basis, even if for that? So there's clearly a current of love and something deep and powerful in that. Uh, Swami Shri Yukteswar, he became a Swami. He renounced the family and he dedicated his life to training people like Yogananda. That's what his life was about. Paramahansa Yogananda, from a very young age, was just absorbed in spiritual devotion and love and went through all kinds of struggle. We don't know about it unless we've read about it. Went through all kinds of struggle to make it to the United States in the 1920s to build an organization that to this day has inspired millions of people. And that was the totality of his life. He died, he wasn't even 70 yet. He died very early, probably because he worked himself to death. He had a heart condition. He didn't take care of himself that well. Why? Because he was writing, he was teaching, he was traveling, he was giving his life to that. Imagine the sense of current, the sense of energy, the sense of power behind a life that's going in that direction. Roy Eugene Davis was the same. I was actually talking to his stepdaughter a few days ago, and we were just talking about how Roy, from the time he began teaching, he traveled constantly. She said sometimes he'd be gone for months, living out of his suitcase, hoping he sold enough books just so he could make it to the next place. So from 18 years old, he stayed with Yogananda for several years. He eventually left the organization, joined the army to do some service. And from that point forward, he began writing and traveling. And even up until the time he died, I was told by Ron Lindon, who worked at CSA and was a very close student of Roy's from, I think, the 70s, that even up until the moment Roy was dying, he was in the hospital. And he asked Ron to bring him his cell phone and his little pad so he could keep typing out the truth journal, so he could keep writing, right? So when you really take that into consideration, we have to keep in mind that just like the people that we surround ourselves with, that's where our mind and our consciousness is going to go. If they're petty and small-minded and a bunch of bigots, well, we're going to be that way too, and we're going to see the world that way. If they are full of love and devotion and they are so deeply interested in spirit, in service, in the spiritual path, that is a powerful current of where their field of consciousness is going. And so by considering them, honoring them, contemplating their lives, it's like we're stepping into that current. And since the power of a lineage is that it builds, I know we've got a lot of questions here, but I feel this is very important to talk about. The power of the lineage builds. This is why being part of an unbroken lineage is absolutely so important, because that momentum of current, of spiritual force, of Lahiri's life for the purpose of Kriya Yoga, that's a current, that's a power. And then Sri Yukteswar continues that, builds upon that, it grows. Yogananda builds upon that, it grows. And so on. Roy Eugene Davis's dedication, it grows. And it overlaps as well. And so it's like it amplifies as it goes. And so by being a part of acknowledging that, are you acknowledging their little human self? Well, yeah, I mean, you see their picture, you say their name, but the important thing is the honoring of that current of energy that they represent. And one of the quickest ways to just tap into that is just think of them. Just think of them. Just like when you think of the love of, if you have a good relationship with your mother, when you think of the love and support of your mother, you feel it. Well, when you think about the lineage, they clearly loved and supported you. I mean, they gave their life for it. And by gave their life, I don't mean they were martyrs, but what I mean is they dedicated their life for us to be here. And that is a very powerful thing. And as the years passed, as I matured, I felt that more and more, because we have to remember that when I met Mr. Davis, I was 20 years old when I first started interacting with him. And I was a 20-year-old, which means even though it was weird that I was interested in yoga and metaphysics, I was still thinking to myself, "Oh, I can do this fine. I don't need him. Like, just tell me what I need. You're a convenient source of information, but I can do it on my own." That's how I thought. And but as the years went by, I realized more and more, there's something else going on here than just he's a convenient source of information for me. and and it's grown in such a way that I can't deny it. So that's why. That's why I do that. And that's why I feel it's important. And that's also why I feel it's very important for you to remain um, faithful to the tradition that you're a part of. That's why I read Roy's books, Yogananda's books, Sri Yukteswar's books, Lahiri Mahasai's books. I do read Ramana Maharshi because I do know that Paramahansa Yogananda completely honored Ramana Maharshi. There's a video of him meeting Ramana Maharshi. I know that Roy was absolutely enamored with Ramana Maharshi. And when I've read Ramana Maharshi's books, never, ever, ever have they contradicted anything that I've seen through the Kriya Yoga practice. So to me, it's in harmony, it's in alignment. There's only a few other authors that I read, not very many. And that's because I focus on that knowledge, that power, that current of information, which is all pointing in the same direction. It's like I want a river that's strong and flowing where I'm going. I don't want a river with all kinds of branches coming off of it that I have to follow it here and be confused and go over there and finally make my way back. So my reading list is very short and very boring. And I usually don't recommend anyone read anything other than that when it comes to spiritual material, because it's all you need. It's all there. Now, if you want to read some fantasy novels, I can give you some good recommendations. But spiritually speaking, try to keep it nice and tight. Because if you keep it nice and tight, then you're more likely to get where you're aiming for. Okay, let's move on. I want to start with the Kriya 12-week program and start a regular practice, and was wondering if I hit a wall or struggle with challenges, is it possible that I can be mentored personally? All right, great, good question. So when you take classes like the 12-week program, that's a self-paced course, and it's got all of the introductory information you need. And many people have said it's a little more than introductory, but I don't think it could be made any simpler without missing the point. So there's a lot there. You are absolutely welcome to email me questions if you have them, and I'm able to email you right back. When you're in that course, you can also participate in these monthly Q&A sessions, no problem. So I'll answer your questions there. We do have individuals who've gone through the Kriya Yoga Apprenticeship Program who do like study groups. So for example, starting in August, Brian Krigler, who you meditated with earlier yesterday, he's going to be doing a study group. So if you're in the program, once a week, you can log in with him, discuss the material and meditate together, and he can help you through it, right? Chris Knuth, who we had leading us in meditation as well yesterday, he's done this as well before, and I think he might have one scheduled coming up for next year. I'm not sure, but Brian is doing one in August. So yes, you do have access to teachers, and I do my best to make sure you have access to me or someone who can help you, because it's very easy to just create a whole bunch of programs and then say good luck. And I've met a lot of people who've had that bad experience. So you do have access, but it's through the Kriya Yoga Apprenticeship Program that becomes more engaging, meaning with the Kriya Yoga Apprenticeship Program, once you're in it, you're welcome to schedule Zoom calls with me every 6 weeks or so for about 20, 25 minutes. So we can go through what you need. So there's definitely ways to do that. And please email us. Let us know if you want to participate in that study group beginning in August for 12 weeks. And I can pass you on to Brian and he'll be set up with that. And it's on a donation basis, the study group. What is the Kriya view of divine avatars? Are the masters of the Kriya lineage avatars? Depends on who you ask. Depends on who you ask. Yogananda would say that Sri Yukteswar was an avatar of knowledge. Many of Yogananda's students, particularly SRF members, would say Yogananda. So Yogananda would say Sri Yukteswar was as an avatar of knowledge. They would say that Yogananda was an avatar of love, and so on. So it depends on who you ask. Avatars, we're all avatars, actually. We're all expressions of spirit. But generally, what people mean when they ask, is someone an avatar? They mean, did this person incarnate with absolutely no karma whatsoever, and they're just here for the sake of sharing Kriya, and that's it? They don't have any baggage. Well, if you go by that definition and you read Autobiography of a Yogi, you know Yogananda had at least a little baggage. And even Sri Yukteswar, he was married, his wife passed away, he struggled with some things as well. So clearly he had some karma too. But then again, going back to the question about the lineage, just because someone has some baggage, just because someone has some stuff to work through, does that mean we can't love that divine essence, their divine essence? And so when I think of Mr. Davis, he was absolutely a human being. But when I see him, what's more important isn't his humanness, although I acknowledge that. What I recognize is, again, the state that he represented. And even Yogananda, when someone asked him about being a guru, Yogananda said, God is the only guru. I'm just God's servant. So it's up to you whether you want to turn people into avatars or not. But I don't think it matters as long as you can recognize their innate divinity one way or the other. Okay. Another long question, so give me a moment to read it. Okay, so this question, let's see, deals with the Kriya Pranayama exercises, pulling the current up through the spinal pathway, and any Sushumna breathing practice. The Sushumna is the energetic spiritual central channel that goes up through the spine, and the Kriya Pranayama taps into that. So the question is, I've understood that we should do this from the root chakra to the brow to the spiritual eye. And he says, as bringing energy up to the crown can be troublesome, especially for beginners. It seems that the techniques presented here and in your books, you breathe from the root of the spine up to the crown and then back again, sometimes resting at the crown. Perhaps I'm just concerned about getting any meditation sickness from practices involving the crown, especially so early on. Okay, so again, we talked yesterday how in the beginning, when we're learning to aim for something, we start really, really broad. I used the idea of when I was learning to shoot a bow. I thought, sure, just put the target out there and I'll just at least hit the target. And I learned very quickly that it was very hard to hit just the target, and I would hit the hillside instead. So my first attempt was just learn how to shoot. And if all you're doing is hitting the hillside, great. But as I got better, I learned to actually just hit the target. And then eventually I learned to hit the bullseye. So we do the same thing with spiritual techniques for beginners, is a lot of the techniques are just trying to hit a larger area. So when I say pull the current up through the spinal pathway, up into the higher brain centers, and even to the crown, it's a general movement, a general flow, a general feeling. I personally never had any issues bringing the energy clear up to the crown. I mean, I had to go through the heart and the throat and so on. I had to work up to it. But once I was there, it never necessarily became a problem. So I never thought about it too much. So it's up to you. If you're concerned about bringing the attention clear up to the crown, don't do it. Just bring it up to the spiritual eye. That's perfect. And even as you engage the Kriya practice longer and longer, you are introduced to refinements. So for example, when I pull the current up through the spinal pathway now, yeah, I can do it just generally, just pulling it all the way up and letting it flow back down. But I also know some refinements, meaning where to move my awareness at certain points as it gets from the throat up into the head and so on. And that's because I've been able to narrow the target. I've been able to shoot a little more specifically. So for beginners, you just pull it up and you let it flow back down. And then some people might say, well, that's very imprecise and that can be very bad for people. Well, if you want to buy into that paradigm, that's fine. But what Mr. Davis had told another one of his advanced disciples was, which I find to be accurate, is that when you pull the current up through the spinal pathway, you are working with an intelligent life force energy. So as long as you're not forcing it, trying to jam it somewhere where it's not supposed to go, if you're being very gentle and just flowing it up through the spine, up into the higher brain centers, it knows where to go. Meaning if you get up so far and it knows just to go to the spiritual eye, that's where it's going to go. You might not necessarily have the sensitivity yet to feel it, but using your imagination and your intention, our goal is simply to pull it up, let it go where it needs to go, and then let it flow back down. And then after years go by and you become able to feel more precisely, more specifically, the movement of that current, then you can talk with me or someone else who might know this, who can pinpoint, okay, well, now as you pull it up here, feel it in this part of your head or feel it in this part of your skull and so on. So if it's concerning to you, just err on the side of caution and don't bring it up to the crown. If, however, this was just like a superstition or something that you heard about and you're not that concerned about it, just pull it all the way up and trust that the energy does know where it needs to go. It's a great question. And absolutely, it is fine to just bring the breath from the root chakra up through the chakras to the Ajna chakra and back down. Perfectly fine. No problem. When chanting mantras, for example, Soham or Gayatri mantra, does it matter if we use music and sing it? And if we pronounce the words exactly correctly? I can look up the meanings to better understand what the chant is and means, but I don't think I get the pronunciations exact. Often it is easier to remember the mantras if I'm singing it. And is there a right way to sing a mantra like using the correct notes? Is it okay to use my own tune? Wonderful questions. I can just tell you what I did. I'm no expert in what you've asked, which means I've just done it my own way. And I love the Gayatri mantra. I learned it by listening to someone sing it as a chant. Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya. That's how I learned it. And sometimes when I meditate on it, that's what I'll meditate on. Or sometimes I just say, Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya. That's how I do it. Remember from the first chapter of the Yoga Sutras, if it can hold your attention, if singing it helps you get into it, to be more focused, to be more engaged, sing it. As far as pronunciation, we've already talked about Sanskrit, probably for a long time, for many years, before I really understood the alphabet and how it looked and how it worked. I didn't pronounce it right. I mean, I might have pronounced it as right as possible, but for example, there's all kinds of N's. There's N, there's N, there's Ng. And if you're just listening, you probably didn't hear any difference, but it has to do with where my tongue was touching the roof of my mouth. And like shanti, like the sha is different than sha. Can you hear a difference? Sha, right? It depends on where the sha is. So people who say shanti or they say shanti, it's still shanti, it's still peace. So yes, you can nerd out on pronouncing things correctly. But in that case, you would certainly need to at least study the beginnings of Sanskrit. And if you just need to know how to do that for a mantra, how to read a mantra correctly, Vyas Houston's American Sanskrit Institute, he does have a huge course on Sanskrit, which I've been going through for 20 years. But he also has an introductory course, which is simply about teaching you the alphabet. And when you see it, how to read it. That would be a good way if you're absolutely concerned about that. And many people would say if you don't pronounce it perfectly, then you're doing it wrong. But I used to pronounce it very wrong. And I still felt quite a connection to the energy of it. So take that for what it's worth. Can you provide a list of Sanskrit words you use with their definitions? Probably, but I don't have that. Oh, do I? Hmm. I might have a glossary of terms. Yeah, I think I did that for the advanced course. So I might be able to pull that out. Um, so if you email us, let me know and I'll look it up for you. I have another question about chakra focus. Yesterday, you mentioned about needing to stay at your heart chakra for some time before moving up. So, what he's referring to is how when I first began practicing meditation, chanting through the chakras, Sushumna breathing, I still went through the process of feeling the throat chakra and spiritual eye and so on, but it was harder for me. Like once I got to the heart, it's just wasn't quite. I really, it was, I was imagining it. I wasn't actually feeling it. Does that mean that sometimes you need to focus on one chakra because that is where you need to work or have a blockage? How would you know where that is? Or as you say, if you just pay attention, will the intelligent prana naturally just gather there? Or could you choose a different chakra as a focus for the month in a kind of modular fashion? Okay, great questions. So my sense is, you know where you need a little more work, where there's difficulty feeling that area. So, for example, some people, they're able to do the Kriya Pranayama, but it's as if once they get to the third chakra, they're not really sure if they feel it, but then all of a sudden they become aware of it again at the heart chakra and so on. So there might be different areas of your body. But what Mr. Davis would say to do was, again, without strain, without forcing it, go through the process of, even if you can't feel the third chakra, use your imagination to bring your awareness there and then continue. Because it's just like when you're working on someone's body with like body work. Yeah, you can go straight to the area that needs worked on and dig into that and push the muscles around and do energetic techniques and so on. And that can be helpful. But on a broader picture, at least from my experience, you don't just want to focus on one area, you want to focus on the whole body, because usually uh, a difficulty isn't the manifestation of just the pinpointed area, it has to do with the whole system. And so by using your imagination to gently try to imagine, to feel into areas that you can't quite sense, you are working out the whole system. And eventually you will start to notice, oh, yeah, I can now feel the third chakra. I can actually feel the throat chakra where I couldn't before. Now, as far as focusing on a chakra a month, that's a very tantric practice. I was reading a really wonderful book one time that took you through, for the first month, you're just focusing on the root chakra. The next month, you're just focusing on the second chakra. The next month, you're focusing on the third chakra. And so it was kind of a year-long process of going through a chakra a month at a time, or a little bit longer, because you would go through them multiple times. So if you're interested in that, you can do that. That's not necessarily part of the teachings of the lineage that I represent, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it if you spent like 5 to 10 minutes a day for a month chanting Om at the root chakra, just to get into it, to feel it, to relax into it. And then the next month, chanting Om at the second chakra, and going through that process. A long-term process like that absolutely could be helpful for you. You're bringing up stuff I wasn't going to talk about, but I'll talk about it. What your chat about the lineage and reading list? What about the material from the Himalayan tradition, Swami Rama and Swami Veda Bharati? I've been previously practiced in this tradition, and it seems as a newbie completely compatible, and it is. Um, I draw great inspiration from these writings. Well, I'll tell you what, I do too. One of the difficulties I have is Swami Rama's scandal. Really, I don't get it. It blows my mind. But he's a human being, and he did release some very good material into the world. And he definitely he definitely trained some just amazing students. Swami Veda Bharati, he's the only, I wished I could have met that person. When I finally discovered his work and his writings, I thought to myself, man, I would love to meet this person. I found out he died in 2015. I think I almost cried when I found out that I couldn't meet Swami Veda Bharati. Um, and I had a discussion with one of my older brother disciples who's been a student of Roy's much longer than I have. And when I discovered all of this, I asked him about that. I said, what did Roy think about Swami Rama? And he wrote me back. He said, it's too much to write in a text. It's like, okay. So we had a conversation. And Roy and Swami Rama were actually friends. They were colleagues and they got along very well. And I was told that Swami Rama really felt that our traditions were the same, that they came from the same source, that the Babaji, the teacher of the tradition, was the same. But he did say that Roy did distance himself from Swami Rama once the scandals and things came out, which makes sense. I absolutely get that because that's not good. But Swami Veda Bharati, that person is Roy, Ramana Maharshi, Swami Veda Bharati, Vyas Houston. These are the people that I know whose work is just a powerhouse moving in the exact same direction. And if you could just focus on that, it would be profound what you would experience. Swami Veda Bharati, I talked about tuning into people's states of consciousness. He was one of them that was just, whoa. Like, I've had my experiences with Mahavatar Babaji and the lineages of our tradition, but never have I felt such a sense of, all I can say is, whoa, tuning into a teacher from another tradition. And he was one of them. So I have a absolute deep love and respect. And because of that, next June 2026, we're going to be doing a live solstice retreat at the Himalayan Institute in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. So if any of you want to come to that, I think it's going to be a great experience. It's going to be 3 days for the solstice, Kriya Yoga and the Sacred Fire. How's that for a title? So thank you for bringing that up. But again, we do have to be very conscientious and not stupid about people who are involved in scandals and things. Sometimes you absolutely need to just run away the other direction. And my emphasis isn't on Swami Rama so much; it's Swami Veda Bharati. And I don't know this for sure, but I have the sense that even Swami Veda Bharati kind of distanced himself a little bit from Swami Rama when all that came out. But it was his teacher, it was his father, and he still loved him, and he still honored what he shared in the positive way. So how you deal with that and how you reconcile that, that's tricky, and you have to figure out a way to do it on your own. Doesn't the Eternal Way have a pretty good list of Sanskrit terms? Good question. Let's look. So the Eternal Way, Roy Eugene Davis's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Let's see, is there a... I thought there was too, but I don't see it in here. The introduction goes through a lot of terms. Yeah, the introduction is very helpful. It's not a listing. Oh, there they are. But these are terms related to the Bhagavad Gita. So you might get somewhere studying the initial terms in the Eternal Way for Sanskrit terms. What about in the future, is it possible to have a retreat in Europe? Absolutely. In 2026, we'll be having a retreat in Dublin, Ireland, the last week of October. So your wish is my command. You can stay tuned for that. It's already reserved. We just haven't really started announcing it yet. So Ireland, Dublin, the end of October, the beginning of November of 2026. Okay. What about the Bible? To my knowledge, Yogananda gave many talks using yoga to clarify Jesus' teachings. What about the part in Autobiography of Yogi where Babaji and Jesus talk about uniting the East and the West? Is this not the mission? It was their mission. Um, Again, you have to take into consideration Yogananda's time coming to the United States in a time when it was dominated by Christianity. And if you weren't a Christian, you're probably going to get lynched. So I'm not trying to say that he was playing the game, although he was kind of playing the game. He was certainly interested in Jesus's teachings as well as Sri Yukteswar. But and even myself, the more I study yoga and Sankhya philosophy, the more of a Catholic I become, which is strange to say. But the concept of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit fits perfectly with Sankhya philosophy. So even when I talked about having an emphasis towards Divine Mother, Kali, well, to me, Kali is also the Mother Mary, and it's equally powerful. Now, as far as the teachings of Jesus, yeah, that's great. It's great to see them from the yogic eye, and that was Yogananda's mission. However, Roy, myself, we live in a different time, and Roy had to wrestle with this too, because for many years he had a picture of Jesus up on the altar in the meditation hall, in between Lahiri Mahashaya and Swami Sri Yukteswar. And okay, that's fine. He was also in the heart of Georgia, the South, from the 70s and the 80s. So it makes sense. You should probably have a picture of Jesus up there. He wrote a book on the teachings of Jesus. It's not in print anymore, but it's a very profound book. But one day he took the picture of Jesus down, and people had a fit. How could you take the picture of Jesus down? It's bad enough you don't even have a picture of Krishna up there. What kind of student of Yogananda are you? I mean, you can just imagine what people have to say. And he didn't defend himself. He didn't even talk about it. He just took it down. Didn't worry about it. But I asked him about it one time. I was like, oh, not that I cared. I mean, it didn't matter to me. I was not really, I was not as Catholic as I am now. I was raised Catholic and I was baptized. So according to my grandmother, I'm fine. I'm still going to heaven. So it's okay. But he said, the teachings of Jesus are very powerful. He says, but you don't have to include them in yoga. Like yoga is perfectly fine without including Christianity. Like it gets the job done without needing to talk about those things. And so essentially what he was saying was, my focus now is just on yoga. I'm not worried about religion. I'm not worried about those things. They can be helpful to people. The video that I had us listen to at the beginning of our session yesterday, I think, that was a conversation with me and Mr. Davis. And in that video, I asked him, I said, what about religion? What's the importance of religion? And he said, religion can be very helpful to people to keep them focused and keep them inspired. He says, but it's not necessary. Yoga takes you directly to the source. And again, this comes back to the idea I have around Sankhya philosophy, where people argue that it's atheistic because it doesn't talk about God. Well, it's atheistic because they didn't have to talk about God. It's like in my relationship, I don't run around telling Jasmine I love her all the time. Every now and then, sure, but she knows I love her. So it's something that's just understood. So I can't speak too much more to that. It is an important mission, but as far as where we are now, I don't need to talk to you about Jesus and Christianity to help you realize the self. We can just do the techniques, do our own process, and we'll realize the self, and then we'll say, oh, that's what Jesus was about. And then we'll say, oh, Catholicism is really just an expression of Sankhya philosophy. Don't quote me on that. Do you have any memories of Ron Lindon? I remember he was dedicated to Roy's cause intensely, and I was saddened to hear the news of his passing. Yeah, I was too. It happened very quickly. I don't have a lot of stories about Ron. I did interview him on the Kriya Yoga podcast, and I believe there's a video of it on the YouTube channel. Ron was very quiet. He was a true blue student of Roy's. he didn't say a whole lot. I mean, he had a lot to say. He was very smart. So when he would give talks at CSA occasionally, and Roy didn't really ask him to do it that much, he had a brilliant mind. Would talk about all kinds of things. But no, I just remember him always being there working on the audio video stuff. I remember having lunch with him, and every now and then he'd have a little trivia that he'd share. Uh, but he was just a very quiet. He was very quietly in the service of the Kriya Yoga tradition. And he would speak when he was called upon, but he wasn't seeking any kind of recognition. And after Roy passed, he took over as the senior minister at CSA. But excuse me, he passed very quickly after Roy did. Okay. All right. So we've got one more question here. Let me see. Maybe there's a few more. Someone says, dang, never heard of the Swami Rama scandal. Well, I'm sorry if I ruined it for you. But if you're concerned about that, just go read Swami Veda Bharati's books. That will be plenty. But yeah, I remember listening to what is it, something about the Himalayan masters. And I remember listening to that book and thinking, man, this is better than Autobiography of a Yogi. So heresy. Anyway, let's get back to this question. Where did my questions go? All right, it's 11:02. We have time for a few more. So if you have other questions that come up, please go ahead and type them into the chat box. And I've got, can you speak on how the Kriya Pranayamas clear karma and how that looks in relationship to our astrology? Absolutely, I'll talk about that. So yesterday I did a very poor job of promoting the astrology course that we will be doing for about 3 months from August through November. And I really don't mean to talk badly about astrology, because I do feel it is extremely helpful, extremely powerful if it's treated the way it's supposed to be treated. My frustration with it was that most people didn't treat it that way. When I'd go to conferences, I'm expecting to have these enlightened conversations about different things, and it never happened. It ended up me being caught up in a drinking contest with a very popular YouTube yoga star who I decided that I can beat him in a drinking contest because I have the power of yoga behind me. And I did. But the next day, my liver was sure feeling it. I don't do that anymore. But anyway, when we can cut through to the essentials of astrology, it is a very powerful system that helps us understand the energies of our body and our karma and our relationship to nature. And that's really the important thing about it. For example, in Vedic astrology, there are all these different elements of the astrological chart. You have your main chart, but there's like 16 other charts that you use, and each chart is related to a particular area of your life. And the chart that deals with your health, the 30th divisional chart, it does deal with your health, but what it really is dealing with is your relationship to nature, to the elements, to the sunshine, to being attuned to the rhythms of life. And so it's beautiful in that you learn from that, well, where does disease come from? It comes from being divorced from the cycles of the seasons. The light as it grows through the year and then gets less. The gravitational effects, the electromagnetic effects between your body, the earth, and the planets, and so on. So when you look at the 30th divisional chart, if you are a very tuned in astrologer, you're not just looking at how someone's liver is. You're looking at, okay, what is their relationship like to these different cycles of nature? And then you can guide them about the different cycles of nature to help them, rather than just saying, oh, it's your liver, do a Mars mantra, that'll help, or a Jupiter mantra, that'll help. And so astrology has all of these really beautiful philosophies, philosophical points that are just deep and rich related to yoga. For example, the Navamsha, the D9 chart, the ninth divisional chart. This is almost always, astrologers teach this as the chart of marriage. And that's okay, because most people's purpose in life, since humans have been around, is to get with someone, have some babies, and perpetuate the species. So most people's purpose is that. But the ninth divisional chart is actually a chart of just purpose, not marriage, because what your purpose is, that's what you need to be married to. That's where your devotion, it's the chart of devotion, where your devotion needs to go. So if you can look at the ninth divisional chart, what you can see is a person's devotion. Where does their devotion lie? What are the obstacles to their devotion? What are the things that are going to get in the way of their faithfulness to that devotion? And so if it's marriage, well, that's easy. What's going to get in the way of your capacity to live long-term, happily, healthily with a human being? But if you can look much deeper than that into the chart, then you can see, where does the person's devotion need to be in this life? Is it to their career? Is it to serving a guru? Is it to entertainment? Is it to providing entertainment for people, uplifting entertainment for people? You can see all these different things. And we all have different threads of karma that point us in those directions. So the beautiful thing about astrology is when you get into it, not just the sun sign pop culture stuff where you hop on YouTube and you find all these random bits of information, but the real putting the puzzle together thing, that's where astrology is beautiful. And so part of my inspiration for this class is that, to tap into that, to inspire people to look at it in that way. But as far as how the Kriya Pranayamas work relationship to your astrology, as you learn, and it is in my book, An Essential Guide to Kriya Yoga Practice, there's a description of how the sun affects our bodies as it moves through the year, and how that's related to the Kriya Pranayama pulling the current up through the spine, because each chakra is related to a planet, a planetary energy, and to a zodiac sign. A planetary energy and a zodiac sign. So when you're looking at an astrological chart, what you're really looking at is where are the energies focused at in their chakras. If we have a lot of Libra, Venus, Taurus combinations, we know that person's heart chakra is where most of the energy is. If we have a lot of emphasis towards the Capricorn, Aquarius, or Saturnine things, we know that a lot of the energy is focused on the first chakra. So it shows where are our karmas accumulated, right? In this body, how have we attracted energy into our karmic system? And it's reflected in the birth chart. And since the movement of the sun as it relates to the earth is a reflection of the movement of the energy of the current through our spine, just like right now, this is a solstice retreat that we're having this discussion. Well, during the solstice, after it moves into tropical Cancer, well, then the energy is primarily within the spiritual eye center. And then it descends down to the throat and the heart and so on, until when the sun gets down to the South Pole, then it's established in the root chakra, and then it begins again. Well, as we practice Kriya Pranayama, we are speeding up that cycle. If we didn't do any Kriya Pranayama, we would essentially be doing one Kriya a year just because we're alive on planet Earth, with the sun going up and down from the South Pole to the North Pole. But what we're doing is we're engaging our conscious awareness, and we're cycling our conscious awareness up through the inner zodiac and letting it flow back down once. And we do it again. There's 2 years of evolution. Now we do it again. There's 3 years of evolution. So every day that you do 12 Kriya Pranayamas, you've essentially softened, worked through 12 years of your karma, because it's cycling that energy through these pathways where your karma is collected. And it's like bleaching it out. When you leave something in the sun, you know how it gets bleached out. The karma becomes less and less and less, until eventually it doesn't affect you as much anymore. And so what happens is, as the years go by, if you had met 19-year-old Ryan, who was pretty much at the mercy of all the karmas in his system, it would have been a very different experience. But you've met 45, 46-year-old Ryan, who's had 25 years of doing lots of Kriyas every day, which means that, yes, there might be a skeleton of the karmas from the past, but they're not that strong, which means I can choose to engage them or not, or just completely ignore them, right? And so what's happening with the Kriya Pranayama is simply that. The sun represents our Atman, our pure self. It's a representation of it, the actual sun. That's why sun worshiping religions are beautiful religions. And actually, if you meditate on the sun, even if you close your eyes and you just sit in the sunlight and you feel that sunlight and you listen in your ears, you will start to hear the Om vibration, because it is the energy from the self, essentially, which gets Om going. So the same thing happens with the sun. This is why yogis wake up, meditate with the sun, feel the sun on their body, get it on your skin. But by doing the Kriya Pranayamas, you are using your inner sun, your inner individualized shining light of awareness, and you are moving it through the spinal pathway to release those karmic bonds, those karmic ties. That's the best way I can describe that in 10 minutes or less. Let's see. Do you pray or talk to a masculine aspect of God? If so, how does this context exchange? This seems to me related to the East-West dichotomy. There's no East-West dichotomy. There's just what you want to do. If you like the Western culture, you can be an enlightened being. Just do it. If you like the Eastern culture, you can completely forget about the ideas of Jesus and so on, and you can become an enlightened being. St. Teresa of Avila, absolutely, Western culture, Catholicism. Isha Das from the Assisi Institute, he is more of the person to talk to about this exchange between East and West. Ultimately, having this exchange between East and West is simply about just letting people do what's right for them. Just let them do it. It doesn't mean that you have to merge the traditions. And in fact, merging the traditions might not necessarily be the best thing. It means that you have an open mind to say, there's a Christian monk in a monastery, and you see him and you feel the love of God there. And you say, great, I don't need to go over there and start talking to him about Atman. He's got it. Or if you're a Christian monk or a priest or a nun, and you see a yogi who's radiant with the light of pure consciousness, they look at you and they say, oh, he's radiant with the light of with Christ. He's got it. I don't need to bother him. So this whole exchange between East and West, you don't need to worry about that much. It's a flavor. It would be like saying, why don't we try to integrate the music of Led Zeppelin and the Beatles? Well, that would be terrible. I love Led Zeppelin. I love the Beatles, but I don't want to see them get all mashed up together. If you are a staunch Led Zeppelin fan or a staunch Beatles fan and you're butting heads all the time, well, that's why we need to have a talk. That's why we need to have an exchange to say, you know what? Maybe Jimmy Page did something great over there, and maybe George Harrison did something great over there. Let's let that be. So don't worry about the East-West dichotomy thing. Just choose what works for you. Now, and I have a friend, a very dear friend. He plays music with me. He's an Eastern Orthodox Christian of some kind. And he doesn't talk a whole lot about his religion. Every now and then I ask him some questions. But when we travel to play a show here and there, this happened this past fall. I woke up and I had been meditating, and I walked out into this, we were staying in a cabin, and I smelled candle smoke. And I saw like a light flickering in his room. And I just became overwhelmed, just like when I had that overwhelming feeling with the monastery in Ireland. I had this overwhelming feeling of love and devotion. I thought, he must be praying. And I didn't say anything about it. But then a few days later, I said, oh, is that what you were doing? He said, yeah, I do that every morning. And so do I feel like I need to go educate him on yoga? No, not in any way. Not in any way. But do I pray or talk to a masculine aspect of God? I don't think so. The idea of God is a very interesting one, and I don't believe I have the capacity to comprehend the nature of God. So I talk, and when I'm praying, and whatever God is, I know hears me. I do relate more to Divine Mother. So when I do prayers or when I do meditations with form, that's what I look to. That's what I bring up into my mind and my awareness. Where, as I mentioned, Mother Mary, that's a very powerful. That's a very powerful image, a very powerful form for me. Even though I don't go to church anymore, like my grandmother would like. That's very powerful, and even the Hail Mary prayer. I don't know why I love that prayer. It just it does something. It's a very powerful prayer. Um, so do what you need to do. That's what it comes down to. All right. Well, that seems to be the last question that we have. Let me scroll up through and give you time to enter one more just in case there's one hanging around out there. I feel like I've got them all. All right. And we have another group of questions. Yes, I am reading the YouTube chat. Okay, final question we have, and then we'll conclude for our weekend retreat. So I find that breathing exercises with a timed inhale, hold, and exhale soothes my nervous system better. When I do meditation without having to worry about breathing, I find I don't get the same benefits. Is it okay to meditate using some sort of timer for the inhale, exhale, or that detracts from the practice? There's a very real reason that the timed breath works better for you, metaphysically as well as neurologically. And Patanjali alludes to this in the Yoga Sutras, where he talks about extension of breath and holding of breath and so on. In meditation, one of the main things we want to do is develop the sixth chakra. That's where we have our wisdom, our insight, our sense of connection to the divine. It's also called the master control center, the Ajna chakra. And this is in relationship to the frontal regions of the brain, which deals with impulse control, being able to manage difficulties, optimism, basically feeling better, and being awake, being alert and present, not stressed, but engaged. Okay, so the very moment that you start regulating your breath, what's that? Pranayama. The moment you start regulating your breath, immediately the frontal regions of the brain turn on, become more active. And that doesn't mean it has to be something complicated like inhaling for a count of 4, holding for a count of 16, exhaling for a count of 8. It doesn't have to be complicated. The moment that you start controlling the breath, meaning I'm sitting here and I'm going to inhale for a count of 4. I'm going to hold it for a count of 4. I'll exhale for a count of 4. I hold it for a count of 4. The moment I started doing that, as opposed to just letting my breath happen as it was previously for the last hour, frontal regions of the brain come online. Sixth chakra comes online. That's simple counting. It doesn't even have to be that. It can just be regulating the breath and paying attention to the breath, of just now breathing in steadily, not even counting, just trying to regulate it, and then letting it flow out smoothly. The very moment I do that, spiritual eye becomes activated, frontal regions of the brain become activated. So, yes, there's a difference. There's a difference. And that's why pranayama in the ranking of the limbs of yoga, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. So once you can live a decent life, you're a decent human being, and now you can sit still. What's the next stage? It's not meditate on samadhi, it's regulate your breath. Pranayama. Because once you start regulating your breath, you start your this part of your brain, this part of your spiritual anatomy starts to become stronger. And it takes a while. So that's why you have to do it consistently over a long period of time. Because in order to go within to experience deeper states of consciousness, subtler, higher realities, you have to have control over your states of consciousness. If you try to go meditate on something and you can't keep your mind steady because your nervous system, your energy system is all over the place, you're not going to do a very good job. So, absolutely, regulation of breath. When you do Kriya Pranayama, even though you're not counting, you are regulating the breath. Now you're focusing, pull the current up through the spine. Let it flow back down. That's a very different kind of breath than how you normally breathe. Um, so, yes, you can use a timer or you can simply count in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the inhale, hold the breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. The key is to keep it very steady. Now, I'm sure you can use a timer. They probably even have apps that do this. But it's good. It's good to do it that way. And then in time, once you have worked out your system, it's like this. When you want to play tennis or football or a sport and you go to the gym a lot, now you're fit. Now you can go play the game. So once you've spent a couple months or a couple years with pranayama, now you know how to get settled and stable. Now you can disregard the breath, and now you can focus on the inner limbs of yoga, pratyahara into that which leads to samadhi. But you have to follow that chain. You have to follow those links in the chain. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. It's like trying to jump from the basement to the 100th floor. You got to go through all the floors to get there. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here this weekend. We'll do a short closing meditation. It's great to see so many people coming together to study, to practice, to learn. And I'm especially thankful to those who helped us this weekend. Chris and Brian, who led the meditations yesterday, and Danelle from New Zealand, who helped to support me during the 2-hour meditation on Friday, and particularly Jasmine. You all emailed her, and she handled the registration. She handled all of the back end details of this, and thanking her especially for putting together that Qigong video for us. So I personally really appreciate all of the assistance. And I appreciate all of you being here to make this possible. So let's meditate just for a few minutes. So bring your awareness to the body. Just feel the body. Let yourself relax into your present moment experience. And begin to regulate your breath. Just notice how you're breathing. And don't regulate it by counting. Just try to breathe in nice and slow and gently, comfortably. When you feel full, then just let your breath out, but regulate it. Make it be slow, comfortable, fluid on the exhale. And with this gentle regulation, that's your anchor. Just observe your body how your body feels. Maybe your hands feel warmer, your chest feels more relaxed, your mind feels a little freer, just by taking a moment to regulate the breath. We can take a moment again for gratitude for all the people who helped make this possible, this retreat. And that includes all of the participants because we can't do it without you. So feel a sense of gratitude, appreciation. The presenters, organizers, participants. You can turn your mind towards the lineage itself because we wouldn't be here talking about this if Roy Eugene Davis, Paramahansa Yogananda, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahashaya, Mahavatar Babaji didn't make a concerted effort to share all these principles, all these revelations with us. And finally, from the heart, radiate compassionate goodwill and well-being to all people everywhere through all time and space. Feel it radiating through the earth. Feel it radiating to the orbit of the moon, merging with the rays of the sun, the field of the sun. Feeling yourself established in harmony with nature, Prakriti, Divine Mother. Feeling yourself established in the Christ consciousness, the seer, Purusha. The radiant essence of your being. And see that for everyone, everywhere. And radiate a sense of compassion for those who are struggling, for those who are having a hard time in life. And for those who just might not be behaving very nicely because they need compassion and love. Remember those people that you know that are full of virtue. They might not be perfect, but they've got a lot of virtue. Feel a sense of joy and celebration for knowing them or even just having known of them. And then celebrate happiness, the gentle, appropriate happiness of spirit, of living a natural life. Remember the faces of people you know who smile and laugh, and celebrate that joy. Remember it. Radiate that through the field of consciousness. And all the while, sense that you are a part of, not separate from, all knowledge, all wisdom, all well-being within the heart and within your mind, the light of spirit. Feeling the heart. You're going to get a little Catholic with me. Hail Mary, full of grace. What does that mean? Hail, Divine Mother, the field of infinite creation, full of grace, full of light. The Lord is with thee. The light of pure consciousness shines on this field. Blessed art thou amongst women. Well, if you remember Autobiography of a Yogi, we are all women in the eyes of God because we are all receptive to that light. So this is the supreme receptive being. Blessed art thou amongst women. And blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. What is that? The enlightened consciousness, Mahat Buddhi. Holy Mary, so holy nature, holy field of experience, Mother of God. So it's through this field of experience that God moves into life, moves into the world. Pray for us sinners. What's a sinner? It's just someone who's not totally aligned with light yet. We're still caught up in Rajas and Tamas. We're still wanting to be an individual, doing our own thing. Now, in this present moment, and at the hour of our death. So if Mother Mary is praying for us now and at the hour of our death, and we'll always remain aware of her light, it'll make it easy for us to flow back into pure consciousness. Amen. Om. So let's chant Om 3 times together. Peace. All right. Wonderful weekend. I always love doing these retreats. Thank you for being here with me online. And as I mentioned, next year we'll actually be doing it in person at the Himalayan Institute. Please donate to Heart International. If you've had the ability to take time off for a weekend and to meditate together, then please think of those who are not so well off and might not be able to do that. And through donations, you can help that. If you want to participate in any of the things we've talked about, Brian's study group with a 12-week introduction course beginning in August for 12 weeks, let us know. We can send you information on that. If you want to participate in the astrology course, that's currently full. We can still send you information and put you on a waiting list just in case. Otherwise, just stay tuned, and we have a lot more to offer, many more years to go. So take care. Peace.